looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
God is filled with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. Your neurobiological system is telling you to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting the danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third episode of Cosmic Catastrophe. I'm joined again today with my wonderful partner, Leah. Hello.
Hello.
And today we're going to continue the discussion on the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. We covered the basics last week. I don't really remember exactly what we covered, but we didn't get into any of the specifics. So what we're going to do over the next several weeks is talk about the specifics and the proxy evidence for why this is probably, and we're approaching almost 100% certainty, a multi-impact event that occurred over maybe 2 decades. And we're going to go over that information. Did you read the articles, any of the articles that I sent you?
Yes, I did.
All right. Now, basic overview is that in 2007, Firestone put out a paper claiming, and it was extraordinary because he did a press conference, that the Younger Dryas boundary was in fact an impact boundary, and he posited the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. And shortly after that, tons of people that were other experts in the field of the Younger Dryas came and attacked him, and they said, no, he's full of it, he made it up, this is all Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. And then now, starting in 2013, a paper came out called Origin and Provenance of Spherules and Magnetic Rains at the Younger Dryas boundary. And this was by Yingxi Wu and others, 5 authors, that had some definitive proof that there were microspherules and magnetic rains that only happened during impacts. And they, again, were poo-pooed by some scientists saying that, oh, no, they just washed in from some rocks that were weathering over there. Well, comes 2014 when the Kinsey paper comes out. Now, the Kinsey paper is the most insane paper I've ever seen. It's like a PhD dissertation. It has hundreds, if not thousands, of references. It has 26 authors, and they used like 8 different types of scanning electron microscopes and X-ray fluorescence and other cutting-edge scientific analysis to look at the Younger Dryas boundary at 26 sites on 3 continents. And the evidence that they produce in this paper is overwhelmingly 100% conclusive that we have an impact. And in the conclusions, I'm going to read this, and I want your thoughts, Leah. In the third to the final paragraph, they say this. This is a long paper. This is 100 pages long, maybe. They say at the very end, and it is so thick because they go over each individual type of technique that they use, the types of nanodiamonds they found, and on and on. And the fact that these diamonds have to come from space. So they're alone. And in their conclusion, they say some researchers have proposed, and they talk about what happened that we just talked about here, that the Younger Dryas boundary originated from wildfires, from volcanism, from the mantle, or maybe some eruptions, or by unknown processes that are coincidentally coeval. So what they're saying is there's all this stuff going on all over this area, and none of it's related. But they then say, but those hypotheses can be rejected now. And that's because each fails to account for the entire assemblage of proxies, what they show here. Numerous accepted impact events display the same evidence found at the Younger Dryas boundary, and the Younger Dryas boundary and the KT impact are the only two in the entire geologic record that show the same proxies. And the scientific community, it's basically a fact. We know about the Chicxulub crater. We know that this gigantic thing hit the Gulf of Mexico and killed the dinosaurs. And the same proxies that they found at that crater that they proved was an impact are also at the Younger Dryas boundary. And the only two places almost on the planet with these proxies. And so I think it's basically a home run here for the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you sent me a couple of articles amidst these papers where the articles are extremely dismissive, and they're including dismissive of some of the proxy data, right? Like, let's say we're talking about spikes in carbon-14 or beryllium-10, or spikes in acidity, or spikes in ice dust. And they'll say, well, you know, we get, or nanodiamonds, we get, you know, some amount of nanodiamonds in cosmic dust on a regular basis, so that it can't explain anything. But what they don't address is that the concentrations of those things are many, many, many times fold what they normally are. I mean, it's right there in the record. And so to dismiss that out of hand is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to share the screen here, but it's getting a little complicated. But I might be sharing it, and I might be showing, and I don't know.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. This is so this comes from the most comprehensive paper on top of the nano. So we just talked about the most comprehensive nanodiamond paper by Kinsey in 2014. Around the same time, Wendy Walbach and maybe 20 or 30 other scientists, some of the scientists that were fighting the hypothesis back in 2008 and 9 flipped after they saw this data, and they're now on this paper, Extraordinary Biomass Burning Episode, an Impact Winter Triggered by the Younger Dryas Cosmic Impact 12,800 years ago. And it's in two parts, the paper. It's extremely voluminous, just like a PhD dissertation. Part 1 is ice cores and glaciers, and part 2 is terrestrial and lacustrine, meaning lake sediments. And comprehensively, they sampled the Younger Dryas impact field, and this is the proxy overlay graph. And if you look at it, you can see a gray bar that's in the center there. That gray bar represents about 2 decades. It's actually 21 years. This is how high resolution this is. And there's a 21-year period of a platinum spike. Now, platinum spikes can be explained due to volcanism, but you also need sulfates, SO4. And they really don't occur here. They occur before it. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a sulfate spike before the Younger Dryas event. That's the Locker Sea eruption. This is a huge eruption that a lot of people in the early days were saying that is where all this proxy data is lining up with the Locker Sea eruption. It turns out that the Locker Sea eruption was about 50 years before the Younger Dryas event. So what we have here is a very anomalous platinum spike. It is, in fact, the most anomalous platinum spike in the last 5 million years. Yeah. And the reason it goes back that far is because 5 million years ago was the last mass extinction prior to this one. And it was the beginning of the Paleocene, and right before the Pleistocene. The beginning of the Ice Age, there was a mass extinction that is linked to a 24-kilometer crater on Earth, and it's accepted. And the platinum spike is there. But no one accepts that this platinum spike is an impact because they say there's no crater. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first, I'm really amazed by the specificity of the data in this graph. That's really incredible. That the time scale is that specific. But I mean, it's like normalcy bias, you know, to see a spike like this and link it to a major catastrophic event of some kind, but not be able to pull that forward, that same kind of data appearing later and suggesting that there's something similar going on. Again, it's completely ridiculous.
Agreed. Now let's talk about the platinum spike here. In this gray zone, which literally is like, let me see if we can get it 1280, let's say 12,830-ish or something. There's a 20-year platinum spike. And if you look at the rest of the proxy data, the lower lines down here, these are different elements on Earth, like magnesium or calcium. And you can see that the minerals are dropping off. These minerals in the proxy data come from dust blowing around. That's how you deposit minerals on Earth or in places. When it's dusty, you can get minerals. They then, fall out in lakes or they get trapped in the ice. During the Younger Dryas event, nothing really happens with the minerals because this is supposedly the burning event. So for 21 years, you've got platinum raining down, nanodiamonds, and potentially boreal forest burning for decades. It's only after everything burns at the end of the platinum event and maybe 10, 20, 30 years later that the minerals start to increase, and they increase rapidly during, this is the cooling time, the 1300 years of ice age. So literally what we're seeing here is planet Earth is a hellhole at this point. Everything is burned, and it's just getting windier and dustier and dustier. And this
And
is
wetter too, right?
Yeah, you're going to have raining events also, huge amounts of rain. Because what's going to happen is it's going to get dark for a while. That's going to help it cool. Then you're going to burn everything, and all that soot and dust is going to go up in the atmosphere and in the sky, and that's going to darken it even more. And then you get the winds. And here we can see those minerals increasing. So that's a pretty important graph.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me see if I know how to stop sharing. Confirm it. Okay, we're back. Okay, so we've got all this proxy data. We have all these papers coming out 2013 and 2014. And it's pretty much a conclusion that the planet in this huge area probably burned. Now, in order to get how do we light things on fire during this event, Leah?
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, you could suggest that it's the result of an impact. You could suggest that it's the result of something like a solar proton event. I mean, you have options. Maybe there's more than one thing going on here.
I don't know how a solar proton event would light fires. It would certainly, in a modern industrial world, light fires because it would blow up power plants and stuff. But during the Younger Dryas, they didn't have cell phones or wires. So,
okay, fair enough.
Nothing would have happened even with a Carrington or 10x version of that, except for auroras. And we're not talking about that. We also have the proxies of nanodiamonds, tektites, microspherules, shocked quartz. These are all indicative of objects, and they're all over the field. So they're all over this field that goes from Siberia to California. So we can't, and we don't have a giant crater. So it's not a single object, and it can't be. It cannot. Go ahead.
The other thing that speaks to that, I think, is just, when I'm sort of reading through and people are talking about the evidence that they're finding at, let's say, various black mat sites, the evidence does vary from site to site, which to me suggests that there are multiple things going on. Maybe you have an impact over here and it has that effect in that particular spot, but somewhere else there's still an impact from that impact, but the results are different just because of the distance away from that original site, for example. But perhaps also we have impacts falling in various places in different ecological environments, which may have different effects.
Well, let's talk about scientifically what we know. And what we know, and I've researched all the papers on the Tunguska event. We know that bolides can come in. And in the Tunguska event, right after 1900, I don't know, in 1908, 1907, it's unimportant. A bolide came in at a high angle that was charged opposite of the planet. And before it hit the planet, it discharged 7-8 kilometers above the surface. this was like a nuclear detonation. It laid down trees for 100 square kilometers. And at the center of the blast, temperatures are estimated to be over 10,000 degrees C. This is the temperature approaching the sun temperatures. But what's interesting is directly below the blast, at the center of the bullseye of the blast zone, the trees were only scorched. They didn't light on fire. And that's because it was so hot, so quick, and all the oxygen was consumed that no burning could occur. It was only the outside of the ring that lit, and then it started to move outwards. And it, in fact, burned that single object 500 square kilometers of forest, leaving the center unburned to be able to light on fire later from a lightning bolt, which I think is what's happening here for a period of hundreds of years. Everything is eventually going to burn.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we discussed, you would be leaving behind in that center area. Part of that would be things like charcoal, right? Which really could be quite a lot of fuel for those fires.
Well, in fact, they found whole trees still alive in the center that were charred. So they regrew after like a decade or so.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so there will be some life left, even if the annihilation occurs. And there has to be, because the people are still here. And
right.
we're going to get to the occupations at the end if we have time. Let's just keep an eye on time. We're going to talk about what happened in the shifts of populations and the fact that the Clovis people did not disappear. And this is going to be a big revelation. A lot of people think the Clovis just went extinct. They just got beat up real bad and became different groups.
Someone else.
Yeah. Now let's continue with the impact. We know we've seen an impact, the Tunguska event. We know it lights forests on fires. We know it can burn huge, large areas, that tiny object. So let's say we have 100 coming in. Is 100 objects coming in to the planet unprecedented? Are we in fairy tale land, do you think?
I don't think there's any reason to think that. I mean, the idea to exclude a possibility like that would be to say that that everything is the same all the time, right? That it would be speaking of uniformity, that catastrophes can happen. So I don't know if there's any way to conclusively say one way or the other, but to rule it out.
Unfortunately, we have an example on Earth in our lifetime that occurred that would mimic the Younger Dryas event. And scientists didn't think it was possible. And in the 1990s, Shoemaker Levy 9 was detected, a comet that was on a collision course with Jupiter. And they didn't expect to ever find something on a collision course with a planet, nor be able to track it. Now, what was fascinating is that the general public and myself, we were watching it in real time, and we knew when the impact date was. Prior to the impact, something unexpected, baffling happened. The comet was ripped apart by Jupiter's electromagnetic forces into a string of pearls. Over 26 objects, one became 26, and then they hit Jupiter in a line as it was rotating. Boom, 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 boom. Now, Jupiter doesn't have an atmosphere like the Earth. So if we have a string of 26 objects coming in, when they hit the upper ionosphere and they start re-entering, those objects are going to break up. Mm-hmm. So now we go from 26 to 2,600 objects that are spread out and slowly re-entering as the Earth is rotating from California towards Siberia. And they're hitting, mostly at this time, is the Laurentide ice sheet. That's the biggest thing. There's ocean, ice sheet, and a little bit of land. So the only place we have impactors is in the East Coast, where the Carolina Bays are. And we have a desert Southwest that looks like it could have been scorched from hell due to plasma discharges. Or
the sediment just being blown away from that area.
Yeah, maybe from a high explosion, because there's no Carolina Bay-like things in the Southwest.
Right.
And that brings us into plasma discharge, maybe some electric universe theory, that this is a charged comet, an electric comet, breaks up. It could be in our solar system for hundreds of years. There is proxy data that lasts for hundreds of years from cosmic material raining down. So we could have comets hitting the sun, causing solar outbursts. This can explain a multiplicity of things occurring all at a hellacious moment over decades that people can survive. So when the initial pieces came in, some people might have been underground and they didn't get vaporized. Because a few minutes later, it's not hot anymore, and you come out and you're like, wow, but there's no one there. Right. That has to have some effect on you.
I mean, it's an amazing thing to think about, right? I mean, it's no wonder that people write about, things describing basically hell on earth. And I'm sort of talking about like biblical stuff, fire and brimstone coming out of the sky. I mean, I don't think that just randomly comes out of people's imagination necessarily. It may be based on experience. It might be based on genetic memory.
So we can go deep on the esoteric before the commercial here, and then before we talk about the peoples and the Clovis phenomenon. But so a lot of the things what's coming up here at the end of October?
Halloween,
which is the Day of the Dead, which is at the end of October. Do you know what happens at the end of October and the beginning of November? The Taurid meteor stream.
Oh, yes, of course.
This is one of the objects from this meteor stream was the Tunguska event.
Right.
It could be a remnant from the Younger Dryas event. One last piece coming in right at that time, end of October. So if we're going to have a cosmic catastrophe that involves objects, it's going to happen during one of our meteor showers. So that's very interesting. And the Taurid meteor streams, there's historic evidence that during that time, other bolides have come in, end of October, beginning of November. So it could be that the Day of the Dead is a remnant from Atlantis or Mu, pre-Diluvian, pre-flood, pre-impact. And that day, and the Wailing Woman, this goes all the way through Mother of Mary and Jesus, all the way back to some of the earliest figurines. 8,000 years ago, there are statues of women crying. And that's where the Day of the Dead comes. And this could be a day when if you did go in a cave and happen to have lunch and you came out and everyone's gone. And it's not just you, because there are hundreds that made it all around. And we can prove this due to the repeopling right after the event where the Clovis go away. There's like 8 other groups of people making very similar Clovis-like points, hunting bison instead of mammoth.
Yeah.
So who are those people?
Right. Who are those people? Right, because one group just completely disappeared and then another group just spontaneously reappeared. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And the time scale is quite short, right? I mean, the gap between what we see for evidence for Folsom versus Clovis is pretty small, isn't it?
Yeah, there's Folsom points as early as 100 years after the 12/8 event, 12/7.
Right. And so, of course, like if you've gone
the same exact point as a Clovis, the only addition is that the fluting goes up higher. It's extremely impossible to replicate, and they're hunting a different megafauna with this. The Folsom, we're now hunting bison, not mammoth.
Right. So, I mean, it just stands to reason. If you've gone through this massive catastrophe and then you come out and the climatic change situation is different, the fauna is different, your cultural groups are different also, right? Because a lot of people have been wiped out. So perhaps how you hunt, if you're hunting in large groups, small groups, whatever that might be, all of those things are going to affect your technology.
There's going to be a meeting with the very few people, whoever's left has to get together and say, yo, they assess what's going on, and their only animals are bison. So they're like, look, we're going to have a meeting on how we're hunting the bison. They all decide they need a new point. The main point guy says, here's bison point. And they're all like, yeah, bison point. And then they're now hunting bison using Folsom technology, which is the same as Clovis, just the next step.
Right. And it really speaks to like human adaptability. I mean, it's really kind of extraordinary when you think about it. I mean, we are able to adapt and come up with new technologies really quickly based on changing conditions. And that's pretty extraordinary. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here still.
Yeah, and just like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, when this paper came out that showed Folsom, this new point right near these bison bones, and they dated the bones to 12/7, they were like, no, they can't be. Who are these people that just showed up after everyone left? Right. And you're like, are you that stupid? So what they then conclude in that paper is that point eroded there from another source and is in association with the bison bones. If you look at how they found it with the brushes, there's 2 bison ribs with a perfect Folsom point right between them that accidentally got there. It's like mind-blowing. Like nobody wants to change their old belief system ever.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing too. I was just thinking about the bias that you see in some of the papers that, well, they'll talk about some proxy data that, and they'll claim that it can't help explain an impact hypothesis, or that we can't conclude that because, well, this material might have weathered out from another layer because of erosion or whatever. And yeah, that's possible. And yes, there are always questions about radiocarbon dating, but at a certain point, when you keep finding the same thing again and again and again, you have to challenge your normalcy bias. You can't keep pretending that you know exactly what's going on if you can't adapt to the changing data. I suddenly cannot hear you.
Oh, it's because I was on mute.
Okay, there we
go. Yeah, so the evidence is overwhelming that this is an impact, a multi-impact. So it's like a multi-Tunguska-like event. And we know, because of Shoemaker-Levy 9, that these comets, which are not made of ice, by the way, we need to poo-poo that. Comets are the same as asteroids. They're made of rock. We've landed on them. There's no water there. It's really dusty, and there's no water. And then the scientists still write papers and like, oh, it's underneath the rock.
It's
the
a dirty
covering the ice.
It's like, a dirty ice cream cone.
There's no ice. The only difference between a comet and an asteroid is one is charged and then forms a coma and a tail. That's it.
Right.
So you could literally have a comet that somehow changes charge and turns off, and then the scientific community would be like, oh my God, it became an asteroid. How did that happen?
There's no ice all of a sudden.
Yeah. So we have a comet, which is a giant asteroid that's charged, and we need a charged object to come in to discharge over the surface, just like the Tunguska event. So we have a multiple Tunguska-like event that the Earth is rotating into, and it's boom, 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 boom. So it probably happened in a day. Based on the younger Dryas impact field, it probably happened in a day.
Well, maybe. I mean, maybe not the initial event, but I guess we'll get back to that.
Yep, we got a commercial. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
Join me on the Brian Rouge Show on Revolution Radio, Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday night from 6 to 8. We talk about the four most vital things, in my view, affecting all of humanity. #1 is UFOs and aliens and their agenda for the advancement of humanity. #2 is the Jewish establishment's control over all aspects of human civilization. #3, the truth about Adolf Hitler, how he was the opposite of what we've been told. #4 is advanced ancient global civilizations. Join me on the Brian Rouge Show, Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 on Studio B on Revolution Radio.
Thank Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And we're back.
Diamond, you love that fake applause.
Yeah. All right, guys. You heard it. Revolution Radio is the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. That means you need to donate or it won't be here. So if you got a couple bucks, it's easy to go over to freedomslips.com and click on the button, and you can even become a Patreon for $1 a month and support Revolution Radio, because they don't censor us. We do have to follow FCC guidelines, so we can't curse or do that stuff. But we can say anything we want, you know, except for doxing and dumb stuff. So this is where when we can actually discuss science that is being censored by the mainstream media. It's completely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
They're not censoring the Younger Dryas event so much as the scientists themselves. So it's the mainstream scientists that are censoring their own field of science and saying that they don't want it to move forward because the science is settled.
Yeah, I said this last week, but the idea that science is consensus-based is completely absurd. There's no such thing as a scientific theory that was created because almost everybody agreed. Like, I love the 99% of all scientists agree that global warming is real and a huge problem. Well, I mean, how many scientists are there in the world? Did they count them? How did they come up with that percentage is what I want to know. And what does it matter if people agree? If the evidence doesn't agree, then it makes no difference.
Let's talk about some fun things. Okay, so what we're going to look at is more specificity in the proxy data. And you can see here that the Younger Dryas impact occurred from 1288 to 12815. That's a period of 7 years of the superior platinum spike, where you get the highest platinum spike for 5 million years, right there. And earlier papers, about 5 years before, they were saying that the Younger Dryas event was this spike here in SO4. That spike in SO4 is the Locker Sea eruption.
Mm.
I got an alarm going off here, so I'm trying to drown that out. But what I want to bring to your attention is here, all of these spikes are large eruptions, including one exactly on the platinum spike. So the Locker Sea is a huge eruption, and people blame the mass extinction on that, but it's clearly not an eruption, just a spike in SO4 and a big eruption. But the Locker Sea may have been triggered by the comet coming close. As it's spinning around and about to hit us, it might like go by the sun and break up, and it's about to hit us. And look at all the volcanic eruptions before the Younger Dryas event and after.
Yeah. And please go ahead. I'll get to that in a minute.
Can you see a different screen now?
Yes.
All right, so take a look at this. This goes against global warming, and that line is the Younger Dryas platinum spike. And the black line on the top, guess what that is? That's carbon dioxide. So when the temperature drops 11 degrees, the carbon dioxide jumps 20 parts per million.
Yep.
In order to get that type of jump, and we did the calculations coming from this paper, in order to get that much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in that short a period of time, you need to burn 10 million square kilometers of forest.
What is the time scale here? I can't see it.
A year, 12 years.
Okay, there we go.
It's instant, the jump up here in
Yeah.
CO2. To jump up that many parts per million CO2, you need to burn 4 million square miles of forest. That is equivalent to all of Canada. Canada is 3.98 million square miles. So you need to burn all of Canada to get that jump.
That's incredible. And then it
And the
keeps going
temperature
up.
drops, doesn't go, the temperature goes down. It doesn't go up. The temperature goes down the entire rise in CO2 here and stays down. So there's no connection between CO2 and temperature based on this one single paper.
Yes.
They don't discuss it, but this proves that CO2 has nothing to do with temperature.
Yes.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yes.
And we have all these volcanic eruptions. So if you have major volcanic eruptions, the sky is dark, the entire forest burn, except a few plants, it is going to be very, very difficult to live.
Yes. Well, and then you've got all of these excess particles in the atmosphere, right? That's going to continue to contribute to the cooling, and it's going to be kind of dark. It sounds like a terrible time to live.
Well, and you have to eat, so you're going to eat lots of meat. This is when we become hyper meat eaters. I wonder why. There's nothing growing. And so the diet changed for thousands of years to just gobbling up meat. And it began after the Bowling-Allerod warming. So we have this warming event that's unexplained. The Clovis culture moves into North America from nobody knows where, and they start hunting megafauna. And the story is that at the Younger Dryas boundary, the Clovis people disappear. Now you're looking at, can you see the Clovis projectile point in the bottom?
Yes. Yes.
There it is. We can all see that, right? Okay, so let's, I don't even have Folsom up here, but let's just get to one of the stories. Something called the Golondrina expansion occurred right after the Younger Dryas event. Do you see the points there at the top?
Yeah.
Those are Clovis points.
Mm-hmm.
They don't call them that. They call them the Golondrina points because they're after the Clovis people are supposed to be missing. But they're right here. This is in South Texas. So South Texas, they made it. That's far away from, I guess, the impactors. There was a group of Clovis that made it in South Texas, and they called them the Golondrina expansion. And you can find those points as early as 10,500 years ago in that area. So, and here we have a group in the Midwest they call the Plainview. They show up at about 10.5. And the Plainview point is very similar to a Clovis point. The most similar is the Cumberland Fluted. And this is the East Coast. So even where the Carolina Bays were, people were there 11,000 years ago making these points. They just didn't show up. They were making long, 5 centimeter long fluted points that are just like Clovis points.
Yeah.
I doubt it. And there's also the Redstone, another group living right with the Cumberland people. So these are new tribes that formed after the big tribe got decimated.
I mean, this is just a great example of bad science, the renaming of all of these points, basing it on an assumption that all of the Clovis are gone. Therefore, we need to call it something else, despite the fact that it looks just like a Clovis point. I mean, that's terrible science.
Yeah. So this is not a Clovis point. It's a Folsom point because the flute goes up to the very tip.
Right. Right.
I'm pretty sure that they have some comparisons of Folsom to Clovis. But these were the points that were used to hunt mammoth. And then the Clovis points were used to hunt mammoth. And then we get Folsom right on the other side of the Younger Dryas boundary. Look at these things. That is very technically advanced.
That fluting is amazing. And I think I asked you this the other day, but we've seen some stuff about modern people trying to recreate Clovis points and how incredibly precise and technical they are, and we have difficulty reproducing it. I would love to see if what would happen if we tried to reproduce a Folsom point. I suspect much of the same, that we'd have difficulty doing it.
Yeah, what came first, the flute or the point?
Right.
Maybe they start with the flute first, and then they carve the point around the flute.
It looks to me like the point happens first and the flute happens later.
Now, here's some interesting things that are conjecture and about not Folsom, but Clovis. So let me see if I can pull up some Clovis point. There's Clovis. Do you see how the flute only goes halfway up?
Yeah.
It's hilarious and this one, it's almost all the way up. So if they just went another half an inch, it would be Folsom. Do you see how they're the same people, and these so-called archaeologists are just frauds?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between those could be explained, and I'm just, this is coming out of my butt. It's not coming out from
Uncle Barry, he knew how to do the flute all the way.
I mean, it could be as simple as like, you have different vegetation. So let's say what you're using for an atlatl, right, is now a different material, and it needs to support the point for a longer length than it used to. I mean, it could be that simple.
Mm-hmm. Or this flute is really important because these were stabbing spears. And and when they pulled the spear back out, they were losing the points in the animal.
That's an interesting idea.
So they made it longer, and they used more sinew to lose less points.
Right.
Because there's no guarantee if you got 12 guys with spears going out, you're going to kill the mammoth. If it turns on you or someone dies, you probably retreat and go get something else.
Right. But also you're hunting different fauna now. Right now you're hunting primarily bison because the mammoth are gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So where are they? Yeah. So this is what they were hunting the bison with when the flute goes all the way through. So this is kind of interesting that there is really no discontinuity in groups. What we have is Clovis culture all over North America until this event literally obliterates the millions of people here. And then there's just a few tribes left coming out of caves or holes. And they're in Texas, and they're on the East Coast. They're all around. Plainview is up in Canada. So all of these groups reemerge after the event, and they can still live here, albeit a different way.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that they do have a Clovis skeleton of a young man. And then when they did the genetic analysis, they determined that they are related to native cultures that are still in North America.
Didn't you say the point of relation was like 40% or something?
Yeah, so they have always been here. And when we say the Anasazi disappeared, no, they didn't. They're still here.
Yeah.
But something obliterated the culture at that moment. So we can probably say 1200 AD, some event occurred where a more widespread culture became broken up into tribes and then developed their own thing, their own pottery, their own projectile points for whatever they needed it for at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because prior to the Clovis, the Younger Dryas event, the Clovis people were widespread, all using the same technology to hunt mammoth. They weren't hunting the bison.
Adaptability.
Yeah, so all we are looking at here is like a history book on technology increasing. We go from really crappy computers to handheld smartphones 2 decades later.
Right, and the culture and the technology changes based on the need to adapt. It's quite simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so after we've got this. And what's interesting is that the Folsom culture, the one we're looking at here, is the only culture during the Younger Dryas period. So Clovis exists up to 1209, and they supposedly disappear. But a few decades later, these people with the same Clovis points are still in the same area, but exclusively in the Great Plains and the center of the continent. There's no one on the coast.
Yeah, that's fascinating because clearly there's a reason why the Folsom are not elsewhere. So what is that reason? There's something else going on the planet that prevents them from being there.
Yeah, so you got the Carolina Bays on the East Coast, and you've got the channeled scablands on the West Coast. So they were scared to go back there because that's where most of the people died.
Yeah.
And they didn't go back there. They did not go back there until it warmed up again at 11.5. We have this huge warming where temperature goes back up 15 C. And all of a sudden, we get all of the people that I just showed you, the Plainview, the Gold Arena explosion, the Cumberland Gap, the Redstone. Mm-hmm. All these groups with Clovis-like technology are now all over. after the warming. Guess what happens after the warming? Things are growing. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's funny how that happens again and again and again in the geological record, right? Every time the climate warms, civilization grows and it advances. And then when it gets cold, it falls off again.
Yeah, so the Folsom culture is simply the next step of Clovis, and we can see what happened. We can see that there was a huge impact event. We can see that it killed everyone on the coast. The floods in the Channel Scablands probably washed everyone away, and those few people that were up high that watched everything wash into the ocean they were in fear of their life. Nothing like this ever happened, and now you've got 2-mile wide rivers that washed whole villages away.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to go back to, you were talking earlier, you were alluding to the, you know, in the esoteric knowledge, this thing about Halloween and the end of October and early November, and the Taurid meteor stream. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is a cycle. You know, obviously these meteors come by every year, and I don't know what was going on cosmically at that point, but something different happened this time around. Let's say that it was this. Perhaps you've postulated the idea that perhaps some of these went into the sun and created some chaos that way. And it's like, if there was a big event as a result of this, then every year after that would elicit fear in people watching the sky every time the Taurid meteor shower comes along. Is this going to happen again?
Yeah. And I don't know if they know, but we know now from astronomy and celestial mechanics that if you look at a broken up comet, which we now call a meteor shower, like every meteor shower is the remnants of a comet that got too close to the sun and broke apart and is now just a dust field. It's literally a ring of Saturn out in space of debris. And as the Earth comes nearby, that's every time of the year, we are either closer or further away from the stream. So different streams have different shapes. And like the Taurids, and the Perseids, there's cycles. Like for the Perseids, every 10 years, every 40 years, every 130 years, there's a brighter and more spectacular stream. Same with the Taurids. It's like I think the Taurids actually have a Nibiru-like pattern where every 2,300 years we get close to them. So, well, anything is possible.
Yeah, and the other thing about that too, so let's say there was a comet impact into the sun, it doesn't mean that all of the pieces are going to be absorbed by the sun all at once, right? You may then have pieces of that comet that are orbiting in some fashion that come back around, and perhaps we have subsequent impacts in years later.
Oh,
you know, maybe it's not like a 1-year thing necessarily.
While they were collecting proxy data in the nanodiamond study, they found lunar material.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means that whatever the comet that broke up, a piece hit the moon, sent dust out, and some of it came back down to Earth during this 2 decades. So we can confirm, if we want to believe, that lunar material at that moment accidentally washed there because it was already over here in Utah. You can believe that. But because of the nanodiamonds, because of the cosmogenic proxies, when you have lunar material also on that layer, it means that the moon's getting hit.
Yeah.
Or because the moon may not discharge, it's actually going to get hit. So maybe some of the more recent impacts on the moon are from this event.
And right. Without an atmosphere, you're going to have direct impacts there.
I haven't looked into any planetary science, but after this, we should look at the moon, see if there's any papers out about recent impacts on the moon.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, since we were talking earlier about how silly it is to dismiss the relevance of the proxy data, I mean, this issue of dismissing certain ideas, like this all makes me think of Velikovsky, right? Worlds in Collision. You know, Velikovsky may not have been correct about exactly what happened, but the huge value in Velikovsky is simply that the idea that can happen, that we can have cometary impacts that have massive effects on the climate on Earth. Yeah. Like that lesson is huge and it's very important.
And it's also affecting geophysically the Earth because we have an increase in large volcanic eruptions before and after the event. And so what it appears as if happened here is that the Younger Dryas event is so unique. It's the most unique event that has occurred in the last 5 million years since the last impact extinction, which kicked off the Ice Age.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first big comet, which we know left a 25-kilometer crater, and the extinction event around 5 or 6 million years ago, it's 5 million. 5.2. I don't know. We'll have to get into that in a different discussion, but because we're covering the Younger Dryas now, that kicked off the Ice Age and sent us where we are now, where it gets cold for 80,000 years and then warm for a little bit. But during this warming period, which is the Bowling Alarod, something happened for thousands of years that drove the temperature down in 3 times, and the final drop down was cosmogenic. Or maybe it was all cosmogenic, just nothing hit until the very last drop down. Nothing came in to Earth to really give us the platinum spike.
Right.
It was screwing with all the other planets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be.
And you know, of course, you can't neglect the idea that both the Ice Age was kicked off from a major catastrophe, and the Earth warmed again, essentially from a major catastrophe that may not have been completely instantaneous, right? It may have had pieces that eventually led to the warming, but it's just something important to note that it doesn't just happen spontaneously. It happens as cause and effect. Because I remember when I was a kid, like learning about the Ice Age, there was no explanation really ever given. It was just like, oh, the Earth got cold all of a sudden. And it's like, okay, well, why did that happen? Like, why would that happen in isolation?
Well, it happened when we got hit by a huge impact about 5 million years ago. And it might have knocked us off kilter.
Yes.
This object that came in during the Bowling Alarod, which caused the cooling to begin, may have been gigantic and shift the Earth. So instead of it's warming, it got cold again.
Sure.
And then when a piece hit us and it got dark, it really got cold. But and then it took a while to warm up because we were in the interstadial. So eventually we're going to warm up.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? But what's interesting when you think of the work of Mario Buildreps and the fact that we might have had 4 rotational pole drifts, each one like a few degrees, and Greenland is slowly slipping towards the equator. Those, according to him, occur at the 100,000 year cycle. So this event has nothing to do with crustal slip. Yeah. Because remember, this is so unique. The only other thing like this is 5 million years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading Paul Lavoulette's paper, and it's interesting that he notes it's a very small note, but he notes that there may have been geomagnetic excursions during Younger Dryas, that there's some evidence of geomagnetic instability in general.
Yeah, there was, and it's minor. If you compare it for, like, say, the last 250,000 years of field strength, it's minor, but it is occurring. There are, it's, if you look at the 3 drops in temperature after the Bowling Alarod, you got one down, a little up, second down, a little up, and then the Younger Dryas. Yeah. Those 3 up and downs are the same up and down of the magnetic field.
Lo and behold.
So the magnetic field in this case is controlling the temperature, and maybe the 100,000 year cycle is another magnetic field thing, where every 100,000 years there's a huge drop down in the sun and then a refiring up. And it's like a 100,000 year roller coaster. And that during the roller coaster, an object comes in and screws up the pooch. Maybe it hits the sun, wonkies the sun's magnetic field, which is trying to shift ours. And we go haywire for a few thousand years until the system can calm down.
Right. I mean, and that's like the electric universe theory kind of model, right? That the electrodynamics here have changed, and so all of the objects around us also act differently, and vice versa.
Well, interestingly enough, an EU researcher, Robert Burke, I told you, reached out to us. We're going to do a podcast tomorrow night. He has, when we put this graph, the Younger Dryas graph up of temperature for him tomorrow night, he's going to explain it using the thunderbolts theory with Venus in close proximity. And this is when the breakup occurred.
Right.
And I think he's got maybe Saturn novaing at this time, which pushes it away into its current position. So
Interesting.
There are other stories with a lot less support. I mean, clearly that's more fantastical. And the support that we're sharing with you is the hard data and what it means and what we know scientifically. So to make your own conclusions.
Yeah.
Because even in the Thunderbolts model with planets in close proximity, you could have plasma discharge sending objects off of these planets and then re-entering other planets and hitting us for a period of time. So that's probably what he will discuss.
Right.
So join us and stay tuned for that. Boom. All right, where do you want to go here?
Well, and maybe we should save this for another show, but I was thinking again about Paul Laviolette and his paper about the possibility of a solar flare influencing the mass extinction and generally happening during the younger Dryas. And I keep wondering, how do we piece that idea, if that's correct? I mean, and he presents quite a lot of evidence in proxy data for that possibility.
Yeah.
How is a solar event interacting with, let's say, like a cometary event, an impact?
Well, I explained it in the first show that what we know, because of all the telemetry and excellent satellites we have now, that even a small sun-diving comet sends off a CME on the opposite side of the sun. Right. So if we have a gigantic object break up and it's now moving chaotically in the inner solar system, at the same time, because if you look at his proxy data on the beryllium spike, and we explained that there's only one naturally occurring beryllium on Earth, and it's not beryllium-10. Beryllium-10 is only formed through cosmic rays in the upper atmosphere, and then it can rain down on us, and there is a major spike for guess how long? Several decades during the platinum spike.
Yes.
So at the same time objects are hitting Earth or exploding above the surface, we have objects. So we have lunar material here on the planet. So these objects are hitting the moon and they're also hitting the sun in abundance. And according to Paul, these objects the levels continue to drive up for quite some time. It's almost 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a show. We just figured it all out, folks. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Support Revolution Radio. Thank you, Leah. Excellent conversation. Check out our channels on YouTube, Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Magnetic Reversal News. And we'll see you all next week.
Take care.
Love you. That's a boom.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.